Howdy folks, I'm here in my backyard and today I'm going to show you how to make a caxixi. The caxixi is a shaker that you use while playing the berimbau. I got my materials ready, including this reed that I bought from the caning shop in Berkeley, California, and some of it that's been sitting in water overnight. A couple tools that you could get by without but are helpful. A puck carved from a gourd, the same gourd that you make the cabasa for a berimbau. I cut this round bottom out of, and some popcorn. All right, so let's get going. Okay, so the first thing you do after cutting the puck out of a gourd is marking the holes, and there should be an odd number of holes, 5, 7, or 9, depending on the size of the caxixi that you're making. This one is 7, and pretty much equally spaced. Start drilling them out. This tool on a Swiss Army knife, it comes in really handy for this, but you could also use one side of a scissors or a drill bit or a drill, and you want to make these holes just big enough for a section of reed to go through. One of the holes is going to be a little bit bigger and I should say like a little bit wider than the rest. It's sort of like 2 holes merge, and you'll see why in a little bit. Okay, so post holes drilled. Okay, to make the post for a 7-post caxixi like this one, you'll need 4 lengths, about like that. You need enough so that when you put it through 2 holes, it could arc over at about like that height off the puck. And then you use that to make another one by getting some wet reed and using that as a measuring stick. You could take 2 together, put their ends together, and send them through the bottom of the hole that's a little bit bigger than all the rest. Squeeze them through together like that. Bring them a little bit more than halfway through and stop there, and take one and go to the side and carefully thread it up through that hole. You don't want to kink the reed right here because it could easily break, so you always want to be careful around where you're bending the reed. And this one should be a little shorter than that one. Actually, this one should be even longer, slightly, a little bit longer like that. Okay, and then get this one even with that one and send it across to the next hole on the other side, and looks like that. Okay, on the next section you just put one through there and one through in the adjacent hole and pull it through about equal, and same on these 2 down here. Oh no, these ones you got to pull through so they're not equal. They're a little bit longer on the side. These 2 that are opposite the double need to be a little bit longer than the ones that are over here on the side. Okay, so about like that. Now I want to take these and visualize or just kind of form it into how the handle is going to be, because these are going to double up on each other and bend in a little bit like this to be the handle. And that looks about right. I probably want to try to get it a little smaller, but I'll leave it like that because we could trim those down later. And then these are going to form the top of the basket and be around about like that. And so those look fine too as far as length. Now I can just leave them all out separate like that, get them relaxed. Once in a while, dip them into water to keep them pliable, and you're ready to start weaving. Okay, ready to start weaving. Now you could start weaving on really any of these posts, but I like to start on the double post and tuck it in behind there with about a quarter to a half inch sticking out past the post, and press it down on the gourd, pinch it down with one hand, and let go with the other. Get these posts lined up a little bit more parallel to each other by gently bending them, and keep this one pressed down to the gourd, and it's going to go under this post, but on the next post it's going to go over or outside of the post right there. Then the next one after that is you have to go under or behind the post. So that's the tricky move right there, and I've learned to do it like this to not break these reeds. Hold this with your thumb, reach over this post with your other fingers, and gently switch them around each other like that and pull it down. Okay, so now it was under this post, over that post, and then under this post, and now here's the key to weaving the caxixi. Stick with that pattern no matter what, and you do the exact same move on the next one after that. Over, under. As I go, I gently straighten these out a little bit, getting them more in line with each other like that. Gentle, not to kink it or bend it too sharply. Okay, so where are we at? This one was under, this one's over. I gotta push that one over a little bit with my finger to get this up through that gap, and then down. Now I'm back where I started, and this one you see will pass lower than that one if it's sticking up, or if it's down all the way like that, that's fine. You could go over it, but I think the best thing is to press the end where you first started, press it in a little bit and keep them both flat to the gourd, and then run that one over the double post and continue the pattern under on the next one. Now you see that little end sticking up right there? Now that one you could just push and tuck it down below the level before it, or after it I mean, and then continue with your same pattern. And tug it tight. Do the same move to get over the post alternately. Straighten out the post a little bit. And continue the pattern. Okay, now already this caxixi is having a strong tendency to shoot out. So I'm gonna act now to start curving it back in. First by squeezing all these, hold on, get this comfortable in front of you. Keep that pinched down with one hand so it doesn't spring out. And start to bend these in towards the center. Gently, but squeeze them in so they're more like that. And then form them like that. Now's a good time to pull out any slack that's in that reed right there, especially on that last time that we went around. Pull that slack out. Let the reed tight, like on its down on itself, and tight into the post as well. That's a little loose like there. I don't really like that. Okay. And now I'm bending those posts in a little bit more aggressively as I round the reed over them. Especially when the reed goes over the outside of the post, that's your chance to bend it in. And now stand back and take a look, and you can see it kind of looks a little bit more like the sides are going up parallel now, or close to it, and that's what we want. And so if you do this in a gradual manner, the shape of the caxixi will have a graceful form going out a little bit back in. But the first time you try it, it's hard. It might be like a little bit more jagged, but hey, that's okay. If it keeps the corn in, you did something right. After a couple more passes, looking pretty good. It's gonna be a pretty big one, but it's okay. And now is a good time to straighten out those posts even more as they run parallel to each other. So something very blunt like this little mini needle nose pliers works really well. Just be careful and gently push those posts over little by little where you could reach them, and try to get it more parallel between the two on either side of it. And same with all of them, just try to get them a little straighter. Okay, so looking pretty good. Now I'm just gonna keep going, same pattern, bending the post in a little bit each time as I go. And of course, stop every once in a while, take a look. Get a little water on it, keep things pliable. And now you see the form coming back in a little bit, like sort of bell shape. That's good, that's what I'm looking for. So I keep going. Okay, so now we've come to the end of that piece of reed that we were using. That was a long reed, and so now I'm going to show you how to transition from one reed to another. First of all, go back to the last post that the reed is tucked behind, or on the inside of, and cut it about 3/8 of an inch past that point, right there. Make sure that end is tucked down, and even for now you could bend it down and in on the previous level. Okay, get another piece of reed. This one, probably because of the shape of the caxixi, you don't want it to be like a super long piece, so long but not super long. And then find where the other one ended, and it ended basically tucked behind this post. So you tuck this behind that same post, crossed over on the previous section. And you could go a little extra, like all the way back over there with it if you want, just to make sure it has enough length. Pinch it down and resume the pattern. So this one it was behind, so on the next post it's in front of or outside of. Over, under. Oh, wait. Over, under, over. Forgot my own pattern. Always pinching it down, always squeezing it tight, because if you don't keep this weave really tight, the contents can come out. The corn or pebbles or beads or whatever you're using on the inside. Okay, so I'll leave that like that for the moment. Press it down one more time. Okay, get these detangled a little bit. All right, now you see that there's 4 that are longer than the others, and they're opposite each other, and 2 of them are that double post, and the other 2 are the 2 that are directly opposite of that. Now I'm going to show you how to make the framework for the handle. These shorter ones just kind of press down and out of the way, and bend these 2 separate long ones over across to either side of the double post, and pinch it down there and look at it. Is that how it's going to work as a handle? Use your fingers as a guide imagine those two fingers going through there. Is there enough space? Looks like about like that for me. And these two, the double posts, keep them parallel, keep them even, and bend them over and pinch them. It's parallel with these other ones on the other side, and those four together are going to make the framework for your handle. Okay, now to secure these posts in place, I look at where the level of the weave goes to right now on the post as I'm pinching it down, and I go down about 5 or 6 levels from there, and maybe 7 or 8 just to make sure you don't cut too much off. And I cut these two right down there. And then I go to the other side and do the same for these two. And then use a tool that is kind of similar to this. You could use, if you have one of these, use it, but if you don't have one of these, use like a nail, like a medium gauge, like a 16D nail, and blunt the front edges and tip a little bit so it's just blunt, and stick whatever it is that you're using, gently put it down in that little gap right there between the post and the weave, and wiggle it around just gently to create a little space right there, and bring the handle post over, and line it up right there, and then gently tuck it down inside that little gap that you made. Wiggle it around so it could get through those little gaps and get down to where you had it pinched before. About 6 levels down, 5 or 6 levels down, whatever you did. It has to be at least like 3 or 4, but it could be a little bit more, but then that gets difficult to get the post all the way down here. So about like that. And then we're going to do the same thing on the other side right here. Create a little space gently. Take this one over and get it into that little gap. You have to wiggle it around a little bit and then tuck it down in there. Sometimes I get a little stuck and use this tool or something like it to just go down in there and create a little space for it to get through. Oh, there we go. That's a little too far. So pull it out and get it even with the other one. All right, so now those are tucked in, and go over, and on the other side it's the same thing, except for these are going to tuck on the inside of those two separate adjacent posts, about like that. On the inside like that. All right, now here's a little tip I learned from experience, is that when you're making the handle, you want these 4 posts that are bent over to line up very well, like and 2 by 2 at the top. So right now, if I need to do any little tugging out or tucking in of one of these to get it the right length, so that it tucks in very close like that, usually I do that. The ones that are on the outside go under the ones that are on the inside, and they all squeeze together into a tight, like 2 by 2 bundle. Okay, so I can leave that like that now, and if you have any length here that you're still weaving, now's a good time to weave a little bit more, just by tucking this one in, like over, under, get it up through there. And that'll be the end for that one. But I could cut it a little bit off right there, but just leave that tucked in down there like that. It could be any post, any of the posts work as far as ending a length of reed and starting another one. So don't worry about that. Okay, now here is where making caxixis gets not as fun, because you have to put these tucked in with across from each other, all four of these, and get them tucked in. It's not that big of a deal, but then to keep weaving, that's the hardest part of making caxixi, especially at the very end, to close this gap up here. All right, so got all the posts tucked in, everything's formed, ready to go for it on the last bit of weaving. This part, like I said, is more difficult in a lot of ways. So use lengths that aren't too long. This is kind of the short side, but I just want to use it. And pick up where you left off on that last bit of reed, that last section of reed tucked in. Tuck yours in there. But now it's a whole different game, because to get over, under requires different moves. See, like you can't bend it over the top anymore, because that's a whole loop here. So you have to tuck it through instead and pull it through without letting that kink right there. Like if it bends too sharply, it will break. So you gotta work it through and down until it's in a spot. And then that one's under, this one gotta go over, and the one after that, of course, is under. So here, to do that one, I take the end and I dive it underneath the next section. And here's where a tool like this comes in really handy. When you get right there, you just grab the end and pull it through like that. It helps a lot to have some kind of needle nose pliers, or at least like small fingers or something to get in there. And then carefully pull that through and tuck it down until you have the same pattern going. Don't allow any gaps to start opening up here. It doesn't really want to stay tucked down well as you do this. So this one goes over, the next one under, and the next after that over. So for those three, all I have to do is go like that. Just keep it from bending too sharply as it goes through. Okay, you can see we're almost finished. Just a little gap left. So now is the time to put in the popcorn or beads or pebbles. I use popcorn because it works and it's cheap and it's available. Get about like a small handful, probably a couple of tablespoons worth. You want it so basically like there's enough beads or corn to kind of cover the bottom of this caxixi, the gourd part, if it's sitting like that. Then I just kind of funnel them into that gap. I test it out. Now's the time you could add a few more or take a few out if you think it's better. I think that's about right. And now the last part of the weave, this is where it gets really tricky, and you got to keep with the same pattern. I've seen people's caxixis where they break from this pattern at the very end and do it like they go parallel across or something, but when I tried it like that, it just didn't come out good and it leaks. So I do like this, and as you send that in there, it gets more and more difficult to get it out. So you have to reach down deep in there with your pliers and pull that out of there. And keep your reed wet. And you get the reed in different sizes and shapes. I used to use smaller reed for this last portion, but it was a little bit easier with the smaller reed, but now I just use one size for the whole thing. Pull through any slack, but don't let these layers ride up, keep them pressed down, and just dive that down in there and fish it out. And work it around the corners, help it keep from breaking. This section I'm doing right now, as it goes like that, there, that one I just press down there, even though it's so small of a space, can't really say it's going under anymore, but it is. So over that one, under this set of posts, over that set of posts, and then send it back under for that next one. Dang, so not quite enough length on this one, so I'm gonna go back a little bit and just tuck that in somewhere. Alright, so that should be enough. So start that over there where I finished the last one and continue the pattern. Well, actually, for this one, I'm gonna thread it backwards from back over here and then down and in there. Speaking of fishing, another little trick I learned was to make a little hook out of a paper clip, and sometimes that comes in handy to fish the reed out of there. Go in there, hook it with that guy, pull it up as you kind of push through from the other end. Use that hook to pull it out of there. Really close to finish now, just gotta get like 1 or 2 more passes in there. Sometimes you have to create a little room in one section to match the other section. Over, under, oh, it's supposed to be through there. Oh man. At this point, some people just want to give up. It was so like easy and fun, and then it just gets like really difficult at the very last few steps here. All right, so finally got that sealed off, and to finish off the whole thing, I just varied from the pattern at the very end just once so that I could come around the outside here, and then I'm gonna take this end, first I'm gonna trim it off so it's clean and not quite as long, because I'm gonna tuck it in back over here like that. So again, create a little space. I want it to go over itself, which is that one right there. So I come in right there and create a little bit of space down in those gaps, carefully and gently, and then take the end and tuck it down in there. Once you get it through a couple sections, you can just press the rest down in there and it will stay like that. Test it. Let's see when the corn comes out. Alright, we're good. Okay, now you can make any final adjustments to your handle section, especially like just make it bigger or smaller, and just take a look at the overall form. Okay, so got that all wrapped, got the ends tucked in, and this caxixi is basically finished. Alright, so the only last thing you might want to do to caxixi like this is you could decorate it with wood burning or other ways. You could treat it with some kind of protecting coat like polyurethane or linseed oil, and you can burn these little wisps off the handle. That's a good way to get rid of those, and then that's it. It's finished.